extend a heartfelt welcome to all the panelists, and I would uh, uh, I feel really privileged to be a part of this summit, which has such a nice panel over here. And basically, through this panel discussion, we have gathered here not to merely mark an occasion, but to unite for a higher purpose. And as I have said before, this summit also aims to forge connections beyond boundaries and celebrate the potency of collaboration. So I'm very glad that people from various organizations have collaborated with us and sort of agreed to participate in this panel. And through this discussion, we are also hoping to chart new territories, confront global challenges, and unite under the banner of a positive change. So, welcome everybody. We have Naina Sahasrabuddhe ma'am, we have Dr. Varada Sambhus, we have Prachi Mogheji, we have Dr. Aditi Narayani Paswan, and we have Avni Sablo. So, please allow me to introduce this very amazing panel. I'll start with Dr. Naina Sahasrabuddhe ma'am. Naina ma'am identifies as a banker, an activist, and social worker, as well as a writer, and also a student of feminism and gender dynamics. She has been associated with the voluntary women's organization Bharatiya Stree Shakti since 1990, and she currently holds the position of vice president. Her Marathi award-winning book titled Stree, focusing on gender equality, was published in 2019. She holds the role of a member within the National Commission for Women's External Advisory Committee for the period of 2022 to 2024. With a career spanning 39 years at Bank of Maharashtra, she retired as Deputy General Manager in Delhi. She has also taken on the role of editing notable books, including 50% आरक्षण और मैं, पहली बार चुनाव लड़ने वाली महिलाओं के लिए हैंडबुक, and Indian Perspective on Women, authored by Drishti. Furthermore, she has involved in curating various conferences and seminars, such as the Gender Smart City Mission, Indian Feminism, and Nari Parivartan Ki Agrani. Her experience includes being a keynote speaker and motivational speaker at numerous conferences and seminars, including the Civil 20. Her contributions reflect a commitment to advancing gender equality, women's rights, and social progress. We welcome you with a very open heart and open minds, ma'am. We are very privileged to have you with us.
Namaskar.
Thank you so much. Next, I would like to introduce Prachi Mogheji. Prachi Moghe is a dedicated professional with a focus on archaeology. She holds the role of an assistant professor at the Center for Extramural Studies, University of Mumbai. With a noteworthy background, she formerly served as the assistant director at Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan's Mungalal Goenka Institute of Postgraduate Studies and Research for an impressive span of 24 years. Recognized for her expertise, she has been acknowledged as a postgraduate teacher specializing in ancient Indian history, culture, and archaeology at the University of Mumbai since 2011. Her involvement extends beyond the classroom as she actively contributes to various academic committees. Notably, she is a valued member of the ad hoc board focusing on ancient Indian culture, archaeology, and Buddhist studies at the University of Mumbai, as well as a contributing member of the BOS in Sanskrit Patkar Verde College, Bombay. In addition to her academic roles, she is a life member of esteemed organizations including the Asiatic Society of Mumbai, Maritime History Society in Mumbai, and the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute in Pune. Her teaching journey is marked by diverse experiences, including 11 years of teaching postgraduate MA courses, 11 years in postgraduate diploma courses, 5 years at the undergraduate level, and 12 years dedicating to teaching certificate courses. Beyond the classroom, she has shared her knowledge on international scale, teaching casual international students at Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan over a period of 9 years. She is not only an academic but also an active member and dedicated Karyakarta of Bharatiya Stree Shakti in Mumbai. With a remarkable tenure of 22 years, she currently holds the position of Vice President in the Mumbai branch and plays a crucial role as a member of the State Executive Council for Maharashtra State within the Bharatiya Stree Shakti organization. Ma'am, we are very, very privileged to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much. Okay. Next, we can introduce Dr. Aditi Narayani Paswan, who is the assistant professor at University of Delhi and a columnist with Indian Express and Outlook. She has been a part of the Commission on the Status of Women, United Nations, New York, from 2016 to 2019. She has co-founded Dalit Adivasi Professors and Scholars Association, one of the leading think tank in the field of study of inclusion and public policy. We welcome you, Dr. Narayani. I think I don't see you on the screen, but
Thank you so much, Alicia.
I think she's there. Yes,
Yeah, she is there. Yeah.
yes, ma'am. Welcome, welcome.
Thank
Welcome
you
to
so
the
much.
Changemaker 20 Summit. We are looking forward to hear your valuable inputs on this topic.
It's
Next is
absolutely, I'll just 1 second, I'll tell you. Here, all my gurus are sitting. Nana ji has been my mentor who has actually introduced me to this world of Indic feminism. So to be with her in itself is it's a privilege and honor for me. Thank you.
thank you, ma'am. Next is Dr. Varda Sambus. She is an assistant professor at the Maharashtra NLU Mumbai. She has recently completed a research fellowship at the Nehru Memorial Museum and Library in New Delhi. She holds an MA, MPhil, and PhD in political studies from JNU Delhi. Her research broadly focuses on religion and politics, cultural politics, and gender studies. She has published research papers in academic journals, chapters for edited volumes, and articles for English and Marathi newspapers. She has presented over 20 research papers at national and international conferences in India and abroad. She is the author of a book, Vari Pilgrimage, Bhakti, Being, and Beyond. We welcome you, Dr. Varada. Again, extremely privileged. I think I'm saying this for everybody, but genuinely, I'm extremely privileged to be hosting this amazing panel. And
The feeling is mutual. I too feel honored and privileged to be part of this panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Finally, we have Avni Sablok. Avni Sablok is a research associate at the Indian Council of World Affairs, New Delhi. Previously, she has worked as a senior research fellow at the Public Policy Research Center, New Delhi. She has also worked as a project consultant at Dalit Indian Chambers of Commerce, NextGen. Her research interests include public policy and international relations, Indian foreign policy, women's security, soft power, and democracy. Her recent work include paper titled Digital India and Diplomacy Towards a Global UPI Payment System and issue brief titled SDG 17 Partnership for Goals, India's Approach and Initiative. We welcome you, Avni, to this Changemaker 20 Summit. Avni is also going to moderate the panel today. The title of the panel is Understanding Feminism Through Indic Lens. And being a student of gender studies myself, I feel extremely honored to be viewer, a listener, and also an host of this panel. Now I'll pass on the mic to Avni to sort of start moderating the panel. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia, for the wonderful introduction. And जैसे अदिति जी ने बोला कि हमारे गुरु बैठे हैं हमारे सामने, तो but बहुत ही wonderful बात ये है that every woman holds that pen and perspective, and every woman helping each other out to lead is a commendable example. So with this, I'll start moderating the session. And obviously, the title of the session is Understanding Feminism Through Indic Lens. So basically, what this means is feminism theories are always westernized. A westernized perspective has been laid out to us throughout our lives. And we've read it, we've seen that in our curriculum, everywhere. And we forget that how we actually operate as an Indian, how Indian women see themselves. It's not from a Western perspective that we've been looking at us like that, but now we've been we through this particular topic we are going to bring forth that how an Indian woman looks at this perspective of feminism. And for the same, I would like to request Naina ma'am to to deliver her introductory remarks on this topic.
Namaskar and good afternoon to all the panelists, co-panelists, esteemed panelists, and the audience. Because this topic is near to my heart, and I always like to speak on this. And I would like, I'm as a student of gender dynamics and gender studies, or whatever you can say. I always like to interact with young people, those who are sitting with me in this panel, and I gain a lot of knowledge about all these things from all of these my friends. So as we know that feminism is originated from the West, and actually feminism is not a single thing, but it is a plural, so we can call it as feminisms, and it is originated from the West, but it did not happen at one time or at one place, or not, nor does it have a consolidated theory or a single principle, but it has been evolved in last 100 or 200 years all over the world, and it has reached to each and no, every corner of this globe, now we can say. Feminism is a specific ideology which advocates for the rights of women. It has made women aware of their conditions, made aware of their rights, and women have started walking on this difficult path for last 200 years. The ideology is based on Western religious concepts, Christian beliefs, functioning of church, and theory of origin or genesis of woman, contemporary situation and the experiences they had. It developed as a reaction to all of these things. Any movement, ideology, or a language for that matter is based out of an experience, thought process, and beliefs, that is where we call it as culture. Feminism or women's rights movement or emancipation movement is the biggest social movement of 20th century. It spread across nations and continents. It has an inevitable enormous impact on family and society. Because family is the basic unit of society, hence women issues are societal issues impacting each person, everyone, a man, a woman, and children. It talks about stereotyping of not only of women but also of men stereotyping. So it is so important a moment of this 20th century, we can say. Women's issues are different, uh, nation to nation, country to country, and are economically poor or developing countries have their own issues, have their own problems. Even an attitude of the activist towards the issues may be different. If it is so, then the methods to resolve them should also be different, which motivated activists from many countries to redefine feminism, how feminism is explained and thought about under the crucial and religious environment, original indigenous thought, history, and culture. The process of presenting the idea of indigenous feminism started afresh. What influences the direction of the movement, the idea or the theory, and the action points of women activists? In my opinion, there are five important points. One is the genesis. What is the idea of genesis of a man and a woman? That is, in Indian perspective, it is a Chaitanya Tattva or Atma, we can say, and it is prevalent in both men and women in same way. So that is the genesis. And I will not talk much on this because Prachi ji will be putting some light on all these ideas. Accordingly, second point is spiritual, religious, or cultural and conventional ideas, which has a great impact on feminism. What is the relationship between man and woman? What is the relationship of human beings with nature? Are they treated as a class? Are they necessarily followed by class conflict, or they support each other? How society looks at women, with respect or only as a sex object? What are religious mulya or principles, ideas, and how the system works? How the ethos reflects in Jivan Vyavahar, that is practices of life. That is the second important point. The third point is socio-political understandings and happenings going around the world. The external factors like wars, invasions, dynastic rulings, etc. And the political ideas like power structures, patriarchy, atrocities, that also has a very huge impact on feminisms. Living traditions and systems is the fourth point, and family system supported by marriage system is the uh, most ancient living tradition of India. India has a living tradition of family system. It's not just a social structure, and marriage system is a part of that. How it impacts on women, it in a positive way or in negative way? Does it provide security and caring mechanism to all members? The long lasting impact of Renaissance, Industrial Revolution, World Wars, globalization, technology revolution, this can be grouped as point number 5. And due to such happenings, world is changed in a big way in last 200 years. It has mixed impact on women, a positive also and negative also. We have immensely proficient panel who will put light on different aspects of women movement in light of Indic ethos. I once again thank you all and organizers for this pertinent topic in this mega event Changemaker 20 Summit. It will be an interesting to understand the Indic perspectives and how it addresses the new age issues of women rights and society. Now I will hand over the mic to Avani, our moderator, and take it to other panelists. They will put their views in details on different topics, which I have mentioned in my opening remarks. And that is what is the Bharatiya Darshan, what are the key concepts of feminism and how they are looked through in Indic perspective, how our culture, Indian culture, is an inclusive culture, and how the concept of intersectionality is uh, meeting sarva samaveshakta or inclusiveness of our society, and so many other topics. And we will put some light on the new age issues also. So thank you for giving me this opportunity of giving opening remarks. Now hand over to Avani.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your introductory remarks. And ma'am has rightly pointed out, and she set the flow for the motion that uh, every woman has a different perspective, different issues, and they should be tackled differently. So now let's move to our next speaker, Prachi ji, so that she could guide us through how, as an Indian woman, how culturally religiously, spiritually, social, politically, how do we view feminism? Over to Prachi, ma'am.
Hello everyone. Thanks, Sauni. Hello everyone. At the outset, I thank organizers for extending me this opportunity. Uh, I will speak on what was the original thought process, because when we want to understand feminism through Indic lens, we should know what is Indic thought process. So, Indic culture values inclusivity, regards the family as its fundamental social structure. So we have our own social system, and family is the basic unit of the society. And in our culture, a couple is viewed as the foundation. So we never say that these are two different entities, man and woman, or man versus woman, or husband and wife, and husband versus wife. It is not like that. It is a unit. It is a ekak, and that is called dampati. Dampati means a couple. So a couple is viewed as the foundation of both the family and the marital institution. So family as a social institution and marriage as a social institutions, these two are very important social institutions in our culture. And basically, along with these social institutions, there are some internal value system. They are like all those value system based on the view, like, and they are four Purusharthas, which we don't go in detail, but we can say that this Dampati, the strengths of this system are mutual cooperation and harmony, not a spirit of competition. They are not against each other. So the ethos of Indian way of life is the harmonious interactions between men and women, husband and wife, and their interdependence. This is very, very important. It is interdependence. Nobody is depending on each other solely, and mutual cooperation and inclusive approach. Indic perspective on men and women is they are equally a portion of the divine essence. So Naina ma'am has spoken about the Atma or Chaitanya Tattva, etc. Let me explain further. In our creation myth, whether it is Nasadiya Sukta or women and men have diverse physiologies and skill sets. They and through the course of time they have their own value system or own work or duties assigned to men and women, but they both have both are equal. Some essence of manhood as well as man has some essence of womanhood. So this is a very important concept that recognize the divine existence of male and female principles in both of them. Indian society adheres to the duty. So it is not right-based society, but it is a duty-based approach. And under this duty-based approach, along with four Purusharthas, there is a concept of Runa. So Runa philosophy is very important. So when someone fulfills their own obligation or runa, debt, and duties, such as upholding dharma. So, dharma means way of life, or dharma means duty. For example, there is a matru pitru runa. It means they have to pay the obeisance to the mother and father, and counterparts' rights are also taken care of automatically. So, all these things are interlinked, interdependent, mutual cooperation. So, as I said, family is the basic unit of society, which is based on right and duty. And if a welfare and well-being of a woman is achieved in family, then it is not difficult to achieve the goal of woman and human welfare at societal level. So, the eternal values are permanent. They are called Shashwata. Just like Gita says that the soul it changes the body in every birth, but the eternity is still there. So thus the time changes, and we have to change the system according to changing time. So in contemporary life, whatever the contemporary issues are there, all these things we have to handle it according to the changing times, but without forgetting our essence, without forgetting our Indic thought process. So the Indian thought process is a circular. It never crisscross each other. It is not compartmentalized, but flow with each other together and compatible to each other. So Indian feminism strongly believes in complementary equality, gender equality, and basically complementary equality is a philosophy of life. So Indian feminism believes in these values in complementary equality, gender equality, and that's why it is I feel this is the Indian perspective in which intrinsic values of equity, justice, inclusivity, and humanism are inculcated. So these values are family centric and for well-being of society and universe. So the balanced view with sensitivity, connectivity with spirituality can bring harmony in different groups. So interdependence, mutual internation, equality, equitability, and equanimity are supportive for not only women's liberation and empowerment, but for emancipation. And this is the journey from incompleteness to completeness. And that's why I think we have to focus on this eternal value system which Indian culture has evolved.
We can take this conversation forward with Dr. Varda. I think you can continue the conversation. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Amni, and I also want to thank the entire team of organizers for giving me this opportunity to share this virtual platform with esteemed guests and speakers present here and sharing their views with us. Uh, as Nainaji and also Prachiji mentioned, we need to have approach towards feminism, which is rooted in the tradition, customs, culture, and understandings of society, which is rooted in that particular context. So, contextualizing feminism has been a major movement in the recent past, particularly with the advent of the notion of intersectionality. I'm sure Dr. Aditi would speak more about intersectionality per se. I'm here to talk about what is the way in which we can Indianize, or more than Indianize, if we want to bring in the Indic lens, or if we want to uh, give very Indian touch to feminism, what are the ways in which we can do that? And as a student of political studies and political theory, I have certain proposals to offer, and of course, we can discuss, deliberate, and debate on those issues. So, when we are thinking in terms of Indic lanes, as Prachiji also mentioned, there, in my understanding, there is very essence of what we can consider as Indic, and that is the idea of spirituality. The civilizational ethos, which revolves around the notions of spirituality. And today, as we are discussing, as this event becomes a part of G20 summit, which is going on, and India is uh, hosting G20 summit in the present day context, the world is looking at India particularly from that spiritual angle. The world is looking at India for having spiritual understanding. So that has been the strength of Indian civilization. And when we adopt certain notions to understand social science theory, which is rooted in Indian spiritual and religious understanding. And I'm using the word spiritual in a very larger context, not in the terms of particular sampradaya or worship systems or cults and sects, but a very broad understanding of spirituality. And I think that has been the strength of Indian civilization, what has kept it going. So, that spiritual understanding, which is based on celebration of difference, which is based on inclusivity, and that accommodates differences, that accommodates diversity, that has been the strength, and that's the reason we say vividhata mein ekta. So there are so many ways, and even when we look at the spiritual understanding or Advaitin understanding, what we can say that there the Parabrahma or the ultimate reality manifests in various forms. So if we keep that as the baseline, now comes the exercise wherein the possibility of adopting the spiritual concepts or the Indic concepts, I would call them, which are very rooted in even the cultural and the religious practices of very ordinary citizens of India. Can we adopt those particular understandings to make sense of Indian feminism or feminism in India? So, to give some instances, can we think of the notion of liberty? Now, as we make this exercise more cogent exercise, What we also need to look at is decolonizing social science theory broadly, and particularly the feminist understanding or theory of feminism. So, as I was discussing about liberty, the very notion of liberty, which is rooted in Western colonial modern context, and as we discuss in our university classes, liberty is something which is considered as prime value for any social movement. Whether any identity based movement would primarily have three important demands for liberty, liberty of each individual, demand for equality, and demand for justice. And other demands, whether it is demand for rights, whether it is demand for representation, whether it is demand for voice, whether it is demand for recognition, all these demands are intertwined either with liberty, equality, or justice. So keeping these three concepts in front of us, and looking at the spiritual tradition, looking at the concepts that are offered by the spiritual traditions in India, can we make sense of these concepts in a new light? That is the exercise that I'm going to mention in next 3 to 4 minutes. So the example of liberty that I was giving, this very notion, which is rooted in individualism and liberal Western modern, and in the context of colonialism, the Enlightenment rationality project, which believed that individual is at the center of society and the primary unit of the society as individual. And because individuals are free to decide for themselves, because individuals and the humans are rational beings, they need to be left free to decide for themselves. That has been the sole genesis of the notion of liberty. And of course, because of paucity of time, I will not go into the different theories of liberty. But this particular understanding of liberty, there are two important ways in which we understand this. One, freeing individual, uh, to set individual free from the obstacles, and second understanding is to empower individuals to enjoy certain rights and freedoms. So one is considered, of course, as negative liberty and the positive liberty. But the problem with this particular understanding is the root of this entire understanding is the notion of linear rationality, the notion of scientific reason. And the problem with that is whether the rationality or the way we understand reason with capital R, whether it remains constant. The decisions that individuals make are believed to be rational decisions, but as we experience in our day-to-day lives, we know that rationality and logical mind keeps changing, and therefore that influences our decisions on day-to-day basis. So if this is the scenario, and if we consider this particular rationality as the basis of liberty, what are the ways in which liberty for each individual, and in particular context the liberty to those who are underprivileged in the society, whether these are the sections which are marginalized historically, like in Indian context, whether the communities which were considered untouchables, or tribal communities, or women, or shudras, or economically backward classes, whether we are able to extend equal amount of liberty to all these individuals, that remains the primary concern. Therefore, in very Western understanding, freeing individual from the structures of state, from the structures of market, from the structures of family and religion, that constituted the broader idea of liberty. However, as we are becoming more global and as we are understanding different societies more nuancedly, what we are understanding that breaking down these structures rather create more problems in the society than freeing individuals from these structures. So then the question is, and again, what I'm doing here is merely proposing an idea, and we can discuss this further. Can the notion of mukti, which fundamentally is considered as salvation or liberation in a very, very spiritual understanding, but the very idea of mukti is something which comes from within. So the external structures can hardly dominate or can hardly put down the person, and therefore this inner strength which would come with practice, which would then help individuals to assert themselves even in their day-to-day lives. So of course I understand the problems also with this concept and also with this particular understanding, because the structural constraints would remain, and merely with the spiritual might and the spiritual strength they cannot be overthrown. However, when we are thinking of destabilizing structures, when we are thinking of deconstructing structures that has not served the purpose in the West, from where we adopted these ideas of liberty, equality, and justice, particularly in the context of feminism. So, can we have an alternative understanding, or can we have more uh, concretized or more contextualized understanding of liberty when it comes to Indian mindset? Similarly, Prachiji mentioned about complementary equality. Adding to that, I would suggest that in terms of equality, can we think of the notion of samatva, or what can be also considered as stabilized mind? So again, this is a very rooted concept in Upanishads and in Bhagavad Gita, in Puranas. So this stabilized mind, when we think about equality, and can we think in terms of uh, more in terms of equanimity, rather than creating merely the external equality between genders and among the people and different groups in the society. So as I mentioned, whether it's liberty or equality, we can go on and on. Whether it is the concept of power, can we think in terms of Shakti instead of power dynamics, and instead of thinking about zero sum game, somebody's victory as somebody's loss, instead of doing that, can we think in terms of Sarvajan Hitaya, Sarvajan Sukhaya, what our Prime Minister also mentioned in his Independence Day speech? So these are the Indian values, these are the ethos, the cultural ethos that we can adopt to reconfigure the ideas of feminism in India. I think I'll stop here, and if needed, we can discuss and debate the other concepts that can have parallel understandings from Indian spiritual tradition. Thank you for your patient listening.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for introducing us to this clarity of opinion, that it is not only the outside notion that we have of strengthening or talking about Shakti, woman led movement, but also how internally empowered we feel to take all these objectives forward. And you're absolutely right in saying that we need to reconfigure the idea of feminism in this light. So, with this, I'll request Aditi ji to take this argument forward.
Thank you so much, Avni ji, and thank you so much, Alisha ji. It's an absolute pleasure and honor to be a part of Changemaker 20 Summit. And it's a point of totally elation that you're organizing a talk, a panel discussion with such esteemed co-panelists, and also on such a topic which is very pertinent. So I'll tell you one thing. I'll start on that. Why do we need to have a discussion or a discourse on this aspect? Because I used to teach in Maitri College in University of Delhi. So in my first class, I asked student who is Maitri. None of them were aware. None. But if I asked them who coined the term of second sex, oh Simon, oh Simon. So that concept of being elite, the concept of being intellectual, is always that we always connected with the idea of West. So when today at the Amrit Kal we are trying to decolonize our consciousness, the first part, the very important segment when we are trying to decolonize our consciousness is about learning more about our Indian cultural values and our civilizational ethos. When I talk about Indian, since Vedic ages, conceptualization and everything has been cleared by the stalwarts of this panel. So I'll just try to throw a few names. The first few names I'll tell you, we always speak about Shakti. We always talk about divine power. We always talk about, and every god that we worship, we talk about is an embodiment of Shakti. You take Lakshmi, the goddess of luck. We take Subhadra, Krishna's sister, the embodiment of good fortune. Durga, the goddess of strength and power. Kali, the force of time. So everything in India we always refer to in context of a women. It is now we are talking about women led development. Our culture, our heritage values has always been centered around women. In other parts of the country, in other parts of the world, people are trying to, build up argument that we respect women, we are trying to give them the agency, we are trying to give them the place. We don't have to give them the agency, we already have the agency. When we're talking about ancient India, if you talk about Gargi, who was a renowned philosopher and a Vedic scholar who lived during the Vedic period, she's known for famous debates. All those debating that you see these days, it has been there since with us from thousands and thousands of years, but none of us are aware of it. I'm sure in Gargi College, if I go today, none of the girls would be aware who is Gargi. Maitreyi, Lopamudra, Adi, Sita, Draupadi, Ahilya, all these women who have actually led the way of how we need to understand feminism. Feminism in today's time, it's all about, reclaiming a right. But it is not reclaiming a right, it is also about discharging my duty with maintaining my dignity. And this is a very important concept that we need to keep in mind. Even if you talk about the Buddhist era or the Buddhist woman, we see Khema, we see Patakara, we see Upla Lavana. All these women, they have marked, they have written their own document. If you Terigata is there, where you talk about the important women as a concept of a stepmother, women in the development of the nunnery, women has been always been the centric idea around whom the ideas of society has been built upon. Our country has gone through different stages. Our country has seen the ancient period. When we talk about the Bhakti period, we Bhakti period is an essence of inclusivity, if I may say so, because with there's the emphasis on inclusivity. We all are aware of Shabri. Shabri was during a Ram Ramayan times, and when Lord Ram came to her, उन्होंने मुंह से बैर उठा के उनको दिया. It is about the dedication. It has no, and other people, the people who do not understand this dedication or the sincerity or the same, the sort of dedication that we have for the person we worship, it is just a faith. So we have been, and talking about intersectionality, so intersectionality as a concept, this word, this very heavy word of it is isms, which has come from the West, it always emphasizes on dividing the society. But our Indic civilization has always been unity. We need to talk about unity, the concept of antodaya. If you etymologically try to understand antodaya, it is like jiska ant mein uday ho. That means that we need to empower the last of the person who is there, the most marginalized. If in Indian context we talk about because of or social or some other reason, there have been certain sections which might be on the peripheries of the marginalization. But our concept, our ideas, our thought tradition is always talking about them, that how do we need to empower the last person who is there. And we need to, with that person, we need to integrate that person in the society with the concept of self-reliance and decentralization. We do not say that, you're being marginalized to just break up with the society. You need to integrate. We need to come as an integrated force. Then only the society, the holistic evolution of the society is possible, which through during the Bhakti time we came to know. Whenever we hear the Sant Soraya Bai, if we hear Abhangas, we know she's always talking about that, there are some kuritya, there are things in the society which need to be reworked upon, revisited, but it is all the society which matters. The people, there are certain sections talking about let's break away, ye toro wo toro tukre hone chahiye. That is not the idea of, and which is about our Indian, and that is what Indian feminism teaches us also. Then there was in 1917s, if you talk about intersectionality concept, we had very famous Dalit autobiographers like Bama, who have written about her story through a lived experiences. She has always tried to narrate the stories of marginalization and everything. So in when you try to, I really am very I don't know how to express it, but we need to develop a curriculum, because the young generation in today's time, they only feel that applying deep cold eyeliners and applying putting a big bindi and being elite and being intellectual is the way, and fighting for my rights. Fighting for my right doesn't mean that I need to belittle my better half or my partner, or need to leave my parents. It's about that it's they are also part. We have a concept of Ardnarishwar in our country. So we all are, as a unit, we need to come. So we need to develop a curriculum of the few names that I took about, and we need to talk about them now. If you last year, our honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi's speech, he mentioned the name of revolt of 1857. You talk about Jhalkari Bai, Uda Devi Pasi. We had such women from the margins who have come and who have fought, but they're not acknowledged because the curriculum tries to acknowledge only certain section of the year. But then they have worked. So while trying to develop, while talking about Indic feminism broadly, the things which I can tell you is like we need to understand the contribution in During the ancient period, we talk about the Vedic Kal. Then we come to the Bhakti Kal. Even during the Buddhist Kal, I can say, or after Bhakti, the women in revolt of 57. And then post independence, we have such great women. And all of us are also, I think, in the 21st century trying to do the same thing. So, with this, I would like to put an end. I think I spoke enough. And thank you so much again for giving me the platform to talk about this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aditi. You've wonderfully taken the argument forward, and you've given me enough matter to talk as well. Because सबने बहुत ही as like very beautifully explained how we take family as the very basic unit, and then how values and inclusivity are paramount. And the concept of dampati also says that it is mutual cooperation and harmony, which I think somewhere or the other our society has forgotten such kind of essence. And we always feel no, a woman has to work in the household. She's mainly confined to the care economy part of the economic setup of the society or of the whole country. And these barriers that we've always had, if we go to our historical and historical aspects, spiritual aspects, and enlighten our minds, we can always we can always come to this conclusion that we've always had an inclusive approach towards feminism, which needs to be revived further. And the very concept of Shakti, Shiv and Shakti means knowledge and power needs to come together. And woman, I strongly believe that a woman needs to awaken the warriors in their particular, their inner energy should come out.
Yeah, I think I agree with you when you said that there should definitely, if not a full-fledged curriculum, we should definitely have something in schools, in educational institutions that would at least give the students and the and probably their families also consequently something to think about. Because yes, now that the whole world, at least in India, the population is so huge, and everybody is constantly on the struggle to sort of survive. Everybody is working, trying to sort of feed themselves, and that is how people generally view their lives nowadays. We don't really tend to think about these aspects. Feminism, this question is from my end only. For the rest of the panel, everybody here, anybody can feel free to answer this. You've spoken about a very nice idea of feminism, which is looking at feminism through an Indic lens. Again, I have been a student of gender studies, and Western approaches to feminism is something that we've been taught over there. But fortunately, we have also seen feminist literature by Indian authors, by Indian women also. um we do have these discussions in forums such as this, like we are having a panel discussion, and it's a very nice discussion that we are having. But in general, when we start talking about feminism in probably a day-to-day conversation, more often than not, feminism is, I think the understanding is still very skewed. People don't understand it from a point of view of equality. It is still seen as something which is giving women the upper hand. So how do you think Indic understanding of feminism can explain the general public how Indic view of feminism also speaks about equality in general? Because nowadays we also see words like humanism, equalism floating around the internet precisely. And there are people who say that we believe in equal rights, so we will not call it feminism, we will call it equalism, etc., etc. There are people who say that. But how should we sort of take this conversation of Indic view of feminism and explain it to the world that this is also about equality, and through this lens you can probably understand it easier? I think people still understand it as something which gives women a more higher power than men, and sort of pitting men and women against each other. This is how feminism is understood. So how would you what are your thoughts on this question? This is open to everyone. Anybody can feel free to unmute themselves and speak on this.
Can I?
I think the question is very pertinent, and this impression has come out of the Marxist theory of class and class conflict. And they are treating men and women as two classes, and one is powerful, that means the other is oppressed. So in our concept, what Prachi ji has told us, that the concept is of a dampati, that means a couple, and in which the concept of equality is inherited into that concept, and no one is no one has upper hand or so, but they are equal. They have different roles to play in the family, but they have equal status, equal sanman, we can say. So that is our concept, and if we go to that concept, there will not be issue of conflict or overpowering someone. Still, so many years, men have powered and controlled women. Now it's our turn, and we will now control them. That is not the concept of Indian philosophy or Indian darshan, whatever we can say.
Just one thing I
Thank
want
you,
to
thank
Yes,
you, ma'am. Anybody else also would? Yes,
Yeah.
please continue.
as ma'am said, she very rightly pointed out that, there are biological differences, right? So when we try to say we are equal, we need to understand their biological constraints.
Madam, I'm told it's perfectly correct. But I would give one example. There is no stereotyped roles of man and woman in ancient times. For example, there is nothing like these works are done by man or these chores are done by woman. So everybody can do any kind of work, not at home. Not it is not only for household chores, but it is for societal manner, public life, as well as economic sections also. So we do have ample of examples in our history that how men and women both were working, and there is no particular role for this, and all these value system or all these characteristics of typical masculine or feminine, they are cultured based in very late period. Earlier it was not like that. So I think what we say, the philosophy was actually in practice in those times, at least till third.
I think till Prachiji comes back, I can come in up for a bit.
Yes.
I mentioned in my introductory remarks about zero sum game. So, zero sum game is basically a concept from international studies or international relations, and the very idea is when one particular bloc or a nation becomes stronger, it essentially means the other is becoming the other bloc or the nation is becoming weaker. So that's the zero sum game of power. Unfortunately, and as Nainaji mentioned in her remarks, that this idea of dichotomous relations, the class conflict idea, which is adopted in a gender perspective from Marxist school of thought, what it has created this zero sum game between genders, and the obvious outcome of that is seen all across the globe. The families are breaking, the systems are breaking, the structures are being questioned. The problem with that, if the breaking of the structures would have yielded any results in terms of strengthening liberties and freedoms and choices and the rights of individuals, we still could have considered that idea of communism or commune as something which would have been welcomed. Unfortunately, we don't see that. More the structures are breaking, more the individuals too are breaking. They are becoming unbounded, they are becoming unsheltered. And the problem with this particular notion, and probably we can also think from a psychoanalytical perspective here, when the family breaks, family as a structure breaks, because in the very Western and the Marxist understanding, it is a patriarchal structure. The question is whether breaking of that family really sets men or women free. Unfortunately, the answer to this question is in negation. So, when we think about gender relations, these are not the power sim games or zero sum games. And when we are thinking about equality, in India, this beautiful notion of celebration of difference, whether it is in terms of sexualities, whether it is in terms of choices, whether it is in terms of life partners, and we have a variety of it. The problem is when in the garb of wokeism or being very liberal and open and progressive, when we adopt woke culture, when we glorify which is not very common, which is not very or when we start undermining what has been the usual course of society, that becomes a problem. So celebration of difference, this culture has been the celebration of difference in all in all terms, and that difference of equality. So we celebrate difference, and that's what creates equality. That has been the Indian kind of ethos, in my understanding. Thank you for this, allowing this information.
Lovely, lovely.
If I'm audible, I would like to give an example and fill in. There was a recent site excavated in Haryana, Sinoli. So when they excavated the site with female burials, they found weapons. So going back to that, it's not any no role is gender specific. Women have been warriors. It's not about our bones are made like that or woman is a weaker sex, but there are evident proof in history, in civilizational history, that women have been warriors. अगर आप if you put your heart and soul to something, it is always said if you put your heart and soul to something, you will be able to achieve it. So we need to believe, we need to go back to our history and understand that perspective.
Right, throughout the times we have women warriors, and they have done wonderful job. When they were required to work within domestic sphere, they worked there, and whenever it was the necessity of the society to come out of their domestic sphere and go on warfares and work for society, they have done it in across times, matlab.
Yeah, this is for Sanoli. It's not only female burial in Sanoli or in Rakhigari or all mega burials which we found in protohistoric period. We have utensils as well as we have arrows and other weapons also, whether it is male or female. Of course, in protohistoric times, we do not have clear-cut evidence that these weapons are used for warfare only, most probably for hunting or for food gathering. So we cannot claim that as burial is with only vessels. It is only woman's job to do household chores. Because right from the dawn of civilization, we do find that all types of household work or outside work, they are managed by both male and female. And even in archaeology, we do have feminist archaeology. We consider this and we analyze the data. So it is, I think we have to look into it with the different perspective, not only the culturally bounded perspective that as they are vessels means they are things. This is a or religious practice, that is life after death, and all other equipments and vessels and all valuable objects are buried along with the male or female corpse. So it is just a practice. There are interesting chat in chat box. So
RTG is saying that
What's
methods of
amazing.
approaching women empowerment has to be adjusted to suit the needs of women. Standard practices are no longer applicable. So we can debate or we could discuss this topic. Ma'am, I would like to add one thing here that is another example. When we look at Mahabharata and we see how Sikandi was a female and who was known as Amma in her previous life. And so that is how she when he was born, when Amma was born as Sikandi, he for she concept that the UN gives forward. See, people could understand a woman's perspective from a male mindset. So it's when we talk about that empowerment in the present context, it's not. It has to be adjusted to the needs of the woman.
Ma'am, there was this question which said methods of approaching women empowerment has to be adjusted to suit the needs of women. There is no standard practice which is applicable anymore. Would any of you like to comment on this statement?
Yeah, actually, I think empowerment is a sense of ownership, and that should come within. And no other external factors are helping to empower women, but it should come within from the women. And if it comes from there, there will not be some standard, because it will have diversified approaches and angles of empowerment, I guess. And what Avani was speaking about, in our approach, all genders are celebrated, and even third gender, which she has referred to as Shikhandi and Amba, that also is there. But basically, in every man, there are some women centric values, and in every woman, there are men centric values, and both are celebrated in the concept of Ardhanari Nateshwar. There may be the different percentage of manly values and women oriented values, but it is always celebrated here, because there is no binary thinking man versus woman, and the stigma attached to that, whatever is possessed by men is powerful, it has great some value, and whatever the values are possessed by women are not that important. That stigma is not there.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. So going back to this question, which we can see in the chat box, needs of women. So my basic question is, which women and which needs? So here again, it seems we are assuming women as a homogeneous category, and that has been the sole problem of standardizing feminism for the globe.
Right.
So when we are, and as a person who teaches at a law school, by nature all laws need to be uniform. So laws are not meant for each individual, those are applicable to the individuals, but whenever laws are made, they are made for the society at large. Now, when we want to approach need-based approach, should we consider each individual? And because we are talking about feminism and women's rights and women's empowerment, should each woman be considered as a unit to account for the needs? And if at all we want to do that, how are we going to do that in terms of policy and law? These are the broad questions that we need to keep in mind. On the other hand, if we have everything uniform, without taking into consideration the cultural and the contextual differences, the economic, social differences, uniform laws are bound to fail. And that we have seen also with the experiments of colonialism and imperialism and the structures that we are still following in terms of law. So those uniform laws do not really work. We need to customize them to suit the needs of the society. So when we are thinking about need-based approach for empowerment of women, I'm not sure which needs are we talking about and who should speak for those needs of women. So what we need to keep in mind, that we need to strike a very clear balance in terms of differences of groups, needs of each individual, needs of the society and the nation states, and the universal needs, the global needs. So if we can really come with this fine balance at these different levels, I think that can give us the answer. In addition to this, at this juncture, the entire discourse of feminism seems to be driven by the rights-based approach. And Prachi mentioned in her remarks that whereas in Indian ethos, Indian society functions more or less on duty centrality. So instead of me and mine, instead of thinking in terms of securing my own individual rights? Is it possible to think in terms of me performing my duty towards my family, towards my society, towards the globe, towards the environment and the universe? Can that be the approach that can be adopted? Because please remember, to offer something, I am fundamentally assuming that I am empowered. Unless I have something, I cannot offer it to somebody else. Also, in terms of my duty. So that would create inherent sense of being powerful. And I think that also connects to what I was mentioning in terms of Indian spiritual ethos. Thank you again.
So, internet is an issue today for us, but irrespective of that, I have a proposal because I really don't want ki this should remain confined to this particular space. And this very concept of understanding feminism through Indic Lens should be taken forward. I think we should need to circulate something on a wider basis and uh, document this particular in this particular knowledge exchange that we've just had, so that there is more clarity of opinion. As Varda ma'am said, that it's not a zero sum game, and we need to be very specific about which kind of rights, which kind of women are we talking about, so that we have a very targeted approach and we are able to address and we are able to bring that. Like Aditi said, the very concept of Antodya we are able to put in every policy making and welfare approach that we take forward. So, in that light, I would like to propose that all of this is documented and this wonderfully presented all theories in front of us that how where we originally come from, the society that we look at today makes us believe that women are confined to households, but women they have their inner strength and Shakti which tells them that they are capable of more, and every day they break those barriers, they come forward and they go and they are going back to this very historical and civilizational practice that we've had, that men and women are equal. It is an inclusive approach that the Indian feminism takes, and the family based society is also a unit. So it always keeps on reviving and coming in front of us that this is how our society should go back to, or how we should strengthen and complement each other, and how every woman should awaken that warrior inside of her and be a very be a driving force in inclusivity in politically, economically, how we can strengthen our nation and take it forward.
Recently, our organization Bharatiya Stree Shakti has come out with this booklet, that is Bharatiya Stree Darshan, that is in Hindi. So, whatever you suggested, Avani, that we are trying to theorize and document it for the larger interest of the society. Yeah.
Very, very glad to know that.
All right. I don't think we have any more questions. Uh, we're getting very good compliments in terms of reactions from people who are watching us. We are getting claps, we are getting smiles, we are getting thumbs ups from people. So all in all, I assume that this was a very enlightening session for everybody who joined in, and at least this gives us a lot to think about, because some things are known to us in a very conventional way, and the kind of work that you are doing at Bharatiya Stree Shakti, I think it gives us a thought process towards a very non-conventional thinking, which, like you mentioned several times, was already there. It was always there. But we do need some voices like yours to sort of reinforce this knowledge that we have, so that we don't really distance ourselves from these kind of knowledge, and to sort of use this theory into practice. This is very much needed, and I appreciate everybody who took time out from their schedules to join in and share your thoughts in such an insightful session. And this is very essential for young change makers, the youth, to sort of know. And I think that sort of fulfills the purpose of you being here at the Changemaker 20 Summit. So once again, I extend heartfelt gratitude to everybody. Thank you so much for being a part of the Changemaker 20 Summit. You are free to join any of the sessions that we have in the next 3 days as well, and we would really appreciate if you're there, if you are a part. And as speakers, as panelists, it was wonderful listening to you. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks a lot.